but I want to, on behalf of the Temple Bethel Sisterhood, I want to welcome you all to our spring presentation, and we are very fortunate to have Chef Dave joining us today. And many of you know Dave Heide from his wonderful restaurant Liliana's, which is one restaurant in a series of many that he has participated in successfully. And he's going to talk to us about his life and history and how he got to be where he is. But one of his newest ventures is the one that captured my attention and that I'm hoping he will spend a lot of time talking about, and that's Little John's Kitchen. And it's a really innovative approach to sustainability as well as economic support for vulnerable individuals in our community. So Dave, thank you so much for coming with today, and I will turn it over to you. And if people have questions, it would be great for you to use the chat. And then at the end, we'll open it up for some more questions. So Dave.
Hi, everybody. Well, it's so great looking around the screen because I actually recognize so many of you. So it's so good to see so many of your faces again. Some of you I haven't seen in over a year and a half because of the pandemic, and it's nice to just see your faces again. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chef Dave, and I have had 3 restaurants named after my kiddos. Liliana's was named after my firstborn. We started on their first birthday, and then Charlie's on Main opened up on Charlie's 7th birthday. And then we had a third kid, and we're like, oh crap, I guess we have to open another restaurant. And so we decided to do a restaurant called Little John's after my youngest, John, who's now 4 years old. And we've been working on this project for 4 years now. And Liliana's is a fine dining New Orleans restaurant. Charlie's on Main was because we had to close due to COVID, but it was a farm to table pub food restaurant with a bunch of gluten-free food and a speakeasy in the basement where you'd pull on a bookshelf and the whole bookshelf would open up and you'd go downstairs and would custom create cocktails for you just based on an idea or a thought. You couldn't order an old fashioned, would kick you out if you tried, but we would make you up something that could fit a dream or a thought or a flavor or a smell or just whatever. We had things as random as like Vladimir Putin riding a lusty polar bear in the middle of winter shirtless. So that was one. It could be something like I want to be walking through a apple orchard in the middle of fall, that kind of thing. So we would just kind of make a drink. So some of those things, the gluten-free cooking and the speakeasy part, are going to be coming back to Liliana's. So that'll be pretty great once we open our dining room back up again. And all the gluten-free stuff we've already started. So if you guys have anyone who's celiac or is really trying to watch eating gluten, our fish fry is gluten-free. All of our everything fried is gluten-free. So we're a real kind of safe haven for anyone with celiac. So that's a little bit about that. A little bit about Little John's, though. That's our newest venture. It actually started out as it was going to be a food truck. And then
I'm sorry, Judy, you've accidentally shared your screen. Can you go to the top and say stop share?
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. At least she wasn't looking at anything inappropriate on her
That's
screen.
embarrassing.
I know. Had that happen in a couple of Zooms so far this year. So that's always been an exciting thing. Or people forget to close all their tabs out and you get to see their whole history. That's always been fun. So Little John's, we're doing something a little bit different. We were originally going to start out as a food truck. And our big difference is instead of a traditional restaurant, we're actually using grocery excess. And a lot of times when people hear grocery excess, they think of food waste. And when they think of food waste, they tend to think of the stuff they throw out of their fridge at home. And that's actually not at all what we're cooking with. So we've been working just with one of the Metcalfs in town. We've been working closely with Tim and Kevin Metcalf. And just from their Hilldale store, we've been able to rescue since October 39 tons of food from ending up in a landfill. And that's from one grocery store. And the other crazy thing about that is not only are we rescuing it, but we only go after the food pantries have already gone through. So we're not interrupting the line of food distribution for any of those food pantries or soup kitchens either. So we're the last people there. And one of the biggest problems is grocery stores aren't, or pantries and soup kitchens aren't able to use fresh product. They just don't have enough storage space. They don't have enough room. They don't have the right kitchen equipment to be able to process it and turn it into food. So we've been able to go in and rescue that. So all of that food that we're taking would have either ended up in a landfill or as compost or something like that. And I just want to show you guys, I don't have it as a digital file to send you guys, but it's really hard sometimes for people to picture what grocery excess looks like, because again, they tend to go right towards the idea of garbage. But here, I'm going to show you this video on my phone. I'm going to hold it up to my camera, so hopefully you guys can see it okay. But this is one day of grocery excess from just one Metcalfe's, and this is the slower of the two Metcalfe's. So here, check this out. Burp. So that's one day of grocery excess, if you can believe it. So all of that food would have ended up in the trash from that day that we went out there. And when you go back through again, I'm going to play it one more time. What I want you to look at this time is I want you to look at the quality of the product that's actually in this cart. And it's incredible. I mean, it's all beautiful, fresh product. And we'll talk about why that is in a second. But here, look at this again. But beautiful cauliflower, carts full of eggs. That was like hash browns and potatoes, beautiful fresh tomatoes, mushrooms that are perfect on the bottom. And when I show that video, a lot of people say right away, like, why? Like, why doesn't the grocery store sell it if it's still perfect? And the problem is us, consumers. We are very, very picky in terms of what we will pick up. And I want you guys to think about what you do at a grocery store. And everyone kind of thinks that it's just them, but it's everybody, okay? Let's do a little experiment. When you guys pick your raspberries, let's say, do you guys just go up and grab the first container of raspberries? Nope, I guarantee you don't, because I've watched all of you in the grocery store, not individually. I don't stalk you and then watch you in the grocery aisle, but I've watched you all, right? We pick up the container and we look at the bottom at that weird little diaper thing on the bottom. And if there's even one little tiny red dot of juice, we put the whole container back, right? If we pick up a thing of strawberries and even the greens on top are even a tiny bit wilted, we say, oh, no, thank you. If we pick up a thing of strawberries and there's one that's white, even if the rest are red and beautiful, we won't pick that box, right? So we all do these things. And there are two big things at play for grocery stores. One is that when grocery stores are trying to fill their shelves, there's a fundamental thing about us as humans, and that's that we will purchase things when they're in abundance. I'm sure that's a survival thing from back in the day, but I'll give you an example again, right? Imagine you go to a grocery store and all you wanted was Honeycrisp apples. That was the only thing you wanted was Honeycrisp apples, and you're so excited, and you show up at the grocery store and there are 7 Honeycrisp apples kind of at the bottom of where that usually is. If you went to apples, the most you're probably going to get is 1 or 2. But if you went to the same grocery store and you weren't even in the mood for Honeycrisp apples, but you knew you liked them, and there was just a giant bin right when you walked in and it said Honeycrisp apples, and there were hundreds of apples stacked up and they were all polished and beautiful, you might buy 6 or 7 apples and take them home and eat them later. So we tend to buy in abundance. So grocery stores know that. They also know that they won't sell very much if there is an abundance. So I'll give you another example. How many of you guys have ever bought a rotisserie chicken before? Ever? Yeah? How many of you guys have ever bought the last rotisserie chicken? Nope, no one will. It's a phenomenon throughout the entire grocery store industry. Nobody buys the last rotisserie chicken. So they continuously stock chicken throughout the entire day. And they know that they're throwing away 3 or 4 of them at the end of the day because nobody wants the last rotisserie chicken. It doesn't matter if you went to the store for a rotisserie chicken, you're not going to buy the last one unless you're like in dire need of food and you had a recipe that just called for rotisserie chicken. So that's a big thing. And then another thing that leads to a lot of the excess is the difference between a sell-by date and an expiration date. And first, let me talk about an expiration date really quick. So an expiration date is a producer mandated date. It has no impact on USDA, freshness, quality, or anything. It's all put there by whoever made it in the first place. There's only one expiration date that's mandated by the USDA, and that's baby formula. Everything else is a manufacturer recommendation. So And the other thing that's really interesting is with sell-by dates, remember that a grocer, when they have a sell-by date, what they're really saying is that when you buy it, most of you guys, I'm assuming, are like me, and you'd expect that that food is still good for about a week in your fridge after you buy it from a good grocery store, right? And so if you went to a great grocery store, I'll use Metcalf's as an example. I think we all agree Metcalf's is probably one of the like nicest grocery stores in the Dane County area. If you were to go to Metcalf's and you got, let's say, a gallon of milk and you took it home, and then the next day you were pouring milk on your cereal and you saw that the sell-by date was in just a day or two, you'd say, oh my God, like Metcalf's is going downhill. This milk is going to be bad in 2 days, right? But the reality is that milk is still good for 7 days after the sell-by date, right? And so grocery stores will go through and they'll pick milk a week before the sell-by date. So that milk is actually good for 2 more weeks. And the other thing that's really interesting, I'm sure some of you guys are like, well, I don't know. I've had milk that was right at the sell-by date and I smelled it and it was bad. So obviously it's all bad because of that, right? Well, no, because when milk is delivered to a grocer, it's kept sealed in a dark space at exactly 36 degrees. And that's the best way to store milk, right? But when we come home, first off, we go grocery shopping and then we go furniture shopping. And then we go and we look at something else. And that milk has been in your 98-degree car for about, 3.5, 4 hours. Then we finally get it home. We put all the stuff on the counter and we start putting stuff away. There's maybe another 40 minutes that it's sitting out. And then every time that we make cereal in the morning, we take the milk out, we open it up, we let air expose to it, we pour a splash in our cereal while we're eating it, and then we put the milk away. So each time you get those temperature differentials, you get air exposure, and that's what makes your milk go bad. If you take milk that's been perfectly sealed and under refrigeration, it'll be good for 2 weeks after a sell-by date. Okay, so that's number one, is that the food that's getting thrown out is not bad whatsoever. In fact, most of the food is better than I can even get at Liliana's. Now, if any of you guys have ever eaten at Liliana's, you know that I use really, really, really fresh product. We work with local farmers. I get the best product I can to put into my menu. But I'll give you an example of how much fresher it is. So Metcalf's, again, I'll use as an example, but they right now, or were before we came along, they were throwing away hundreds of pounds of ground beef a day. And one of the reasons for that is that Tom Metcalf, who started it, I don't know if any of you guys ever knew Tom, but he was a great guy. He was the dad of Tim and Kevin Metcalf, but he was born a butcher, and he really believed that people should have meat be able to last a week in their fridge. And he didn't like the idea of gassing the ground beef when it came out, so it always looked red. And so he came up with a policy that at all Metcalfs, ground beef is only allowed to be out on the shelves for 24 hours before it's gone, because meat is only good for about 7 days after grinding. And he wanted to make sure that the consumers got a great product. So all of the ground beef at Metcalf's was ground within 24 hours of you getting it. I can't even get that at Liliana's if I tried. Like if I asked for fresh ground beef that was ground within 24 hours, I couldn't even get it from a supplier. And that food was getting thrown out. And I'm guessing a lot of you are like, well, why would they throw it out? Like, couldn't someone use it? I mean, think about all the people who need food. But the problem is you have to follow the chain, right? You have to follow down the chain of where the food goes, and you have to look at who the end user is. And the end user of that protein, of that meat, was food pantries and soup kitchens, right? And none of them have refrigeration, let alone enough for 300 pounds of beef every day. So what do you do as a grocery store? Do you let them take it and then hopefully maybe they try and hand it out that day? But then you take a product that was already in the grocer's mind, something that needed to get used that day or the next day, and now you don't know what happens. What if someone just leaves it out at room temp? What if they put it in a bag? What if they give it to someone who doesn't have refrigeration? If you think about a lot of people who are experiencing homelessness, they don't have a big refrigerator. They don't have really an oven. They have like a hotel room to, microwave something in. So they were really worried about what happens to the end product and the end consumer. So I want to talk about that for a second because I think it's really important. We have this we have this thing that we all do, right? Where we do something and we just assume that down the line, once we've fulfilled our part, it's taken care of. And I'll give you an example, okay? I want a show of hands. How many of you guys recycle? Raise your hand if you recycle. Awesome. You guys are all good humans. But here's the deal. I've got a question for you. How many of you guys rinse out and take the labels off of every single plastic container that you have in your recycling bin. Raise your hand if you do that for every single one. There you go, Marcia. So here's the thing, right? We all put that in our little blue bin and we all feel like we've done our part. But the reality is, because China isn't taking plastics anymore, any plastic that isn't in perfect condition, which means label removed and rinsed out completely, ends up in a landfill. But we did our part, right? We thought we put it in the blue bin. We thought we did our part. We thought we're saving the environment. But because we don't follow it all the way through to the end of the chain, we're not really doing our part. And it's the same thing that was happening with Metcalf's. They were donating product and like to a food pantry, some of the big food pantries in town, but they weren't actually following the product all the way. And what happens if you take, like I've said, we've done 38 tons from just one grocery store. There are 38 grocery stores in the Dane County area. Imagine that amount of waste. Well, we've done 38 tons since October, so that's in just 6 months or so. So let's say on average, maybe let's say 80 tons of food per grocery store gets thrown out. You multiply that by 30 grocery stores. What pantry in town could handle that? None of them is the answer. They can't. They don't have the refrigeration. They don't have the storage. They don't have any way to prep it. So even though it got donated to a food pantry or soup kitchen, the end receipt of that was the garbage can is where it ended up. So every day, places like River Food Pantry and Badger Prairie Needs Network have dumpsters full of totally usable food because they don't have a way to process it. So that's where we come in. So this is what Little John's does. So what Little John's does, we have multiple different facets, but basically what we are is we take grocery excess and we turn it into affordable, delicious food made by real chefs, not just a volunteer in a kitchen, but real chefs with really good degrees and a lot of background in culinary. And we make that food accessible for everyone, regardless of means. And that word everyone is really important to me, okay? Because we are not just trying to give food to people who are homeless or people who are just food insecure. We want to make sure that every single person has access to healthy and nutritious food, and we want them all to be at the same table. So how many of you guys have eaten at Liliana's? Can I just see a raise of hand? Anyone? Yeah? Oh, thank you guys. Appreciate it. But here's the thing that I started noticing, and this happened especially when I opened Charlie's. I noticed that, oh, hi, Jane. I noticed especially that once I opened up Charlie's, I noticed something, and that was that although almost all of my regulars from Liliana's came down to Charlie's and tried it out once or twice, maybe only 70% of my customers at Charlie's went back to Liliana's, right? And it was because it was a different price point. It was a different comfortability. Liliana's is more fine dining. Charlie's was more of a pub, right? So then I started thinking about that even more. And I thought about like, well, what about Noodles and Company? I bet if you were to poll every single person who walks into a Noodles and Company and ask them, have you ever been to Liliana's? Maybe only 30% of them have ever come across the street to Liliana's, even though we're kitty corner. But I bet you a majority of my consumers from Liliana's had gone to Noodles and Company at one point in time to try it out. And then I started going down that path even more. What about like Taco Bell? I bet you maybe 2% of the people at Taco Bell have ever eaten at Liliana's, but I guarantee almost everyone on this call at one point in time, whether you want to admit it or not, have been through that like 10 o'clock drive-through of shame through Taco Bell when nothing was open, right? We've all been able to have access to it. Even we didn't. Okay, Eve, maybe not you, but everybody else. We've all been able, or even if you didn't, you have the ability to access it, correct? Right? And I want you to think though about that for a second. What does that really mean? Well, think about the quality of ingredients you get at a Liliana's or a Noodles and Company, and think about as you go down that tier, think about the quality of food that those people are getting. And I want you to think about the food security and the wealth of the people that are going to each of those different restaurants. And what you'll see is that the people at the highest quality restaurant are getting the best quality product. They're getting amazing fresh produce, protein from local farms, very little preservatives and additives, and things that are really made with love, right? And I want you to think about what you get at a Taco Bell. Even if you've never been there, Eve, I want everyone else to think about what a Taco Bell experience is, right? And it's rehydrated beef product with bagged refried beans and pre-shaved lettuce that has a bunch of gas and bleach put on it to make it look bright green and stay crisp, right? Like this is what we give to people. And I want to back up a little bit because I think I want to make something really clear. I personally don't make food just to feed people. Like that's not my goal in life. And maybe that's true for some people, but for me, that's not why I cook food. Why I cook food is because it's my way of giving you love from me. Okay, when you come to my restaurant, I'm passing on my story, I'm passing on the love that I have, and I'm giving it to you guys. And this is my wonderful little superpower. I love being able to give my love to you. And I can tell you this, I'm not alone. I bet you every single person on this call can relate. Okay, I want you to think about this. Have you guys ever taken just like a tortilla and some American cheese slices and then folded it over and microwaved it and told yourself it was a quesadilla? Yeah, right? We've all done some sort of garbage thing to feed ourselves, right? Whether or not it's that quesadilla, right? But we've all done some sort of garbage thing for ourselves because we're like, it's fine, it's calories, I need something quick, I'm gonna take it and go. But would you guys ever serve that to your best friend who is coming over? Oh, hell no. There's no way any of you would ever give that nasty microwave dried out tortilla with those sad slices of American cheese ever to a loved one, because we pass our love through to people through our cooking, right? Every time you cook, it comes with a story. How many of you guys learned how to cook with your mom or your grandma or some relative, right? And how many of you guys got that like pass through of story? So cooking was the original storyteller. It's how we passed on tradition. You know, if you were to ask your mom if she did a lot of cooking, like I know my mom, if I were to ask her what's your biscuit recipe, she'd have no freaking clue what her biscuit recipe is, but she could make the best damn biscuit you're ever going to eat in your life. She was from West Virginia. She was really proud of it. Her mom taught her grandma taught her mom, and that biscuit recipe has been passed down for generations. But I guarantee you, my mom could not tell you what the recipe is for biscuits. And if she tried, it would be the worst biscuit in the world because it's like her handful of flour is so different than my handful of flour, right? Her pinch of salt is very different than my pinch of salt. All those things are all textural and based on that kind of story and communication of love. Now, why is that important for what I'm doing? I want you to think about what the pass through of love and communication is to our most in need and our most food insecure. What do we tell them with our story? What do we give them with the food that we give them? What does Taco Bell say in terms of love? What does your average food from a soup kitchen or a food pantry say in terms of love? Right? I really want you to think about that. And I want you to think about what kind of food would you want to give to someone that you knew barely had enough money for rent, that was struggling to even put food on the table for their kids, that had to take their 3 kids out to go grocery shopping and tell them, hey, we've got $6 in the bank account. So that's what our budget is to work with. And most of you guys are getting ramen or boxed mac and cheese, right? Now, what happens when they go to the place that's supposed to support them and they get something that's not even boxed mac and cheese in terms of craft and quality? So what we're trying to do with Little John's is we're trying to take the efficiencies you get in a for-profit business and apply them to the nonprofit world of food security. So we can do what we're building right now is we're building a 25,000 square foot space, 25,000, not 2,500, that we think will pretty much end food insecurity in Dane County. And we're doing that from a couple different ways. So first off, soup kitchens and food pantries are wonderful. Second Harvest is wonderful. We're not saying that any of them are bad. But what I am saying is those kinds of, and we'll have a problem with. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying we can do better. We can get better quality food and better nutrition to people. We can do it more efficiently. And how many of you guys have ever volunteered at a soup kitchen or a food pantry before? Some of you guys? And I think one of the things that you'll see a lot in a lot of those places is that you'll see a traditional kitchen, like a restaurant kitchen, like what Liliana's has, that they'll be really proud of. They're like, we raised $250,000 to build this kitchen. But the problem is it's more than a kitchen that you need. You need a really good chef. You need bigger scale equipment. And most chefs who are really talented tend not to pick food insecurity as the place they want to work at because the pay isn't that good, because they're working with donations, right? And you're not really working with the best quality ingredients, right? A lot of those pantries and soup kitchens have to work with a lot of canned good, boxed good, frozen product. And it's hard to keep a big inspired chef happy cooking that food over and over again. And the other problem is just scale. So like I said, we've rescued 38 tons of food since October at Liliana's, and that's where we're cooking Little John's food of right now. All out of my kitchen. That's why my dining room isn't open right now. It's full of coolers and tables and all sorts of stuff just to try and put food out. But in that time, we've put out 172,000 meals into the community. So think about that, 172,000 meals. But think about what that means when we're trying to cook it. Liliana's has a great kitchen, super efficient, wonderful kitchen for cooking about 100 people a day, right? But what happens when I want to cook something like pasta for 480 people? Like, think about how much your pot takes up on your stove when you're trying to cook for 2 or 4 people, right? When you're cooking 480 people worth of pasta, we need 8 60-quart, which is this big around, 8 60-quart pots of water, salted and boiling, in order to cook that pasta, right? Which also, I don't know if you know how much 60-quart pans of water are filled with pasta. I don't even know. I'm going to tell you it's really darn heavy. That's all I'm going to tell you. That's the scientific weight of measure, really darn heavy. And we've got to have 2 people, one on either side of the handles, to lift it down off the stove, walk it with like baby steps over to the sink and dump it, and do that 5 times. And to heat those pots up, it takes about 2.5 hours with my commercial 250,000 BTU range, right? So even in my kitchen, my professional kitchen, it takes a lot of work and energy in order to be able to cook for people, right? So one of the things that's tough is that's the same equipment that they've put into so many of these places, right? When Little John's is up and running, our commissary kitchen that we're building will have 3 120-gallon steam jacketed kettles, which means in just one of those, I could cook enough pasta for all 480 people, and the water would come to a boil in only 30 minutes instead of 2 hours. And it's got a hydraulic lift down, so no one's injuring or hurting themselves. So what I mean when I say before about bringing the efficiencies of big scale to the nonprofit world, what I'm saying is we're going to be able to take those efficiencies of big production equipment to be able to use that to help feed more people. So that's kind of like what we're doing. We're building a space. We have a veteran training program. So we have a paid $15 an hour for 6-month veteran training kitchen. And with that veteran training kitchen, we're also guaranteeing them an associate's degree from Madison College once they finish our program as well, completely paid for and free. A lot of you guys may not know this, but all of you have heard of the GI Bill, right? Yeah. Guarantees college for veterans. It's such a great program. How many of you guys know that after 3 years, once you've started taking funds from the GI Bill, it disappears? Yep. So after 3 years, you lose the funds from the GI Bill. So I'll give a great example. The University of Wisconsin has a 50% graduation rate. Okay, 50% of all students who go to UW-Madison graduate. When you look at that same statistic for veterans, 4% graduate. Okay. And it's because they're dealing with things like trauma and PTSD and all of these like things that they had from before, and they've been deployed for 7 to 9 years, right? And they come back and they're competing with 18-year-olds right out of high school who are still in the swing of things, right? So it's really challenging for them. A lot of them drop out and aren't able to make it. And they're like, well, I'll go back in a couple of years and I'll finish up my schooling. And they go back in a couple of years to find out that their entire GI Bill, the reason why a lot of them went to go fight for our country in the first place, is completely gone. So one of the things we want to do is make sure that we can find people in education if they've lost it, but also think about in a restaurant, right? We've got executive chef and chef de cuisine and sous chef. We've got all these things. And in fact, I don't know if you guys know this, but the entire kitchen system of executive chef, whatever, was created by a guy named Escoffier, and he was a French military general. So he actually set up kitchen brigades to be just like the brigades he had when he was on the field of battle. So one of the things we thought is, hey, great, what if we could give that camaraderie and brotherhood you get in cooking, and we could give that structure that they're used to, and we could help those people, those veterans who serve for our country, be able to go and find a new life for themselves post-military. Because a lot of people really struggle with, what do I do after I'm back from service? I learned a lot of things in my research for Little John's, some good and some bad. Some of the bad ones were, one of them having to do with veterans, was since 1998, okay, we've lost 5,400 troops to active duty combat, okay? And in that same time period, we've lost 158,000 to suicide. So one of the things that was really important for us was, hey, with these horrible crap statistics, can we go and can we help people who've come back? Can we give them a sense of purpose, a sense of place? So we have our veteran training program, paid $15 an hour for 6 months at a time. And then we also have a pay what you can restaurant in the front of the building. So I know that I've been talking a lot, and I really want to open up to any questions you might have. And before I do, I want to tell you guys some exciting news. One, we're finally moving out of Liliana's dining room so I can put it back together and eventually open up to see your guys' smiling faces again. But to do so, we were able to secure an events facility in Verona that used to be called the Heights event venue, and they're giving it to us for free for a year and a half. So we'll be able to take that. It's a 13,000 square foot space. So we'll be able to amp up and serve even more meals than we currently are. And then we also, from Urban Land Interest, just got donated a space right up on the Capitol Square where we're going to have our Pay What You Can restaurant starting up in about a month. So it's at 3 North Pinckney, which is right next to the old Dream Bank. You can literally see the Capitol building from our window in front. It used to be a Quiznos, but we're going to make it all purdy and then open up to the public, and it's all Pay What You Can. So any questions from anyone?
Hi, sorry, I didn't realize I had to turn the unmute. Just curious, are you like, is there any way to get involved in helping you?
Yes, absolutely. So there are 3 kind of major ways that we're looking for help right now. One of them is obviously financial. We've got to raise about $6 million to build our facility out the way we need it. And whether that comes from, you know, we're not even asking anyone on this call for any, but like people you might know or friends you might have who are interested in food security. We're doing tours now. So if you're interested in coming on a tour and seeing what Little John's is about, every other week, we're doing a tour on a Wednesday night. And it includes some snacks that we make up and some beverages to drink. And then we do a little tour of the space and kind of show you what we're all about. So that's one part, is helping get the word out. So another one is volunteers. So we're looking for people who can maybe do graphic design or who want to come and help out, who want to come help portion food. We have Meatball Mondays. So you can come, and with all that ground beef, we make meatballs every single week. And we're also helping other not-for-profits like Sunshine Place. We're working with Patrick DePula, and we're actually making all of the meatballs and meatloaf for him so that he can help get 500 meals out a week to Sunshine Place as well. So that's so in person, volunteer, or just helping get the word out are 3 big ones. So I know I just threw out $6 million like it was nothing. We know that's a really big ask. And if you know anyone who's ever done not-for-profit work and they're trying to do a big capital campaign, the first thing that they're going to tell you is they're going to say, okay, before you go live with your campaign, you need to fund 80% of what you need. And after you funded 80%, then you go public. Okay. So that's what I was supposed to do. But I didn't do that. We're live right now, and we've raised not anywhere near 80% of the 6 million we need. And I've had some other nonprofits ask me why. Like, why are you doing it that way? You should do it the other way, get the big, donors secured up front and any grants you can up front. But they're all used to doing a project over 5 years. And here's what I'll tell you. Every single week, I'm going out into the community and I'm helping feed people who are experiencing homelessness. And I'll tell you a quick story. We have about, I guess it was about 4 months ago. Remember when we had that really, really, really cold spell right at the end of February? It was really, really cold, and they were telling us like, oh my gosh, stay indoors. Well, we went out to a homeless encampment to bring them meals. And there was a mom, and she had 3 kids, and they were living out of a tent. And the story that we heard when we went in there, when we were talking to her, the story that we heard her talking to her partner about, not even talking to us, but the story that she was talking to her partner about was, I wonder how we're going to get through tonight. We only have $5 and we're out of gas in the car. So they were trying to decide how often they'd have to set the alarm on their phone to remember to turn their car on to keep the heat up enough that their kids wouldn't die, right? So like, this is in Dane County. This isn't in some third world country. This isn't in some like wealth disparaged city. This is in Dane County, one of the richest counties in Wisconsin. And we have people who are on the verge of losing their children in a car. So when people tell me, hey, Dave, why don't you just do it the traditional way? I'm not going to. Like, I'm going to do it as fast as I can, because I can't, in all good honesty, look at someone in the face and say, hey, we'll just wait 5 years. In 5 years, we'll bring you meals every day. But that one of her kids, a 6-year-old, came up to me and thanked us for the food. And we're like, well, let us know if we can bring more. And the kid was like, this is the first hot meal we've had in 2 weeks. right? So I want you to think about, like, I mean, that's why we're doing what we're doing and why we're doing it at a different pace and why we're really pushing. I'm taking 0 salary from Little John's. I'm taking none. I have an executive director, or a director of operations. Her name's Jennifer Zisser. She worked with Task for 15 years. She works about 60 hours a week now for Little John's, and she's also taking 0 pay. We don't care about the money. We really don't. If I cared about the money, I definitely wouldn't be starting a nonprofit. We really care about fixing the problem with food insecurity, and we care about helping people. So yeah, those are the 3 ways that we could really use help: getting the word out, donations, all of those things are fantastic. I am a for-profit business person. I have never loved the not-for-profit realm. I think that they're all run the way that they have to be, but it's kind of inefficiently, right? Because they have no revenue stream. Think about any nonprofit that you like, right? Anyone. It can be Second Harvest, it can be, the Humane Society. Think about any not-for-profit you like, and the number one problem with them is what happens if the philanthropic part of their mission goes away, and what if they can't get grants? Will any of them survive? And the answer is no. Like, a majority of not-for-profits will go under if they don't continue to pull on the resources of the community. And it's not to say that that's bad, but that was one of the biggest missions for me. Is I approach it from a business standpoint of how do we make sure that we stay afloat? So we have paid contracts we're doing, we have food we're donating, we have our training program, but all of it is meant to end up with a net positive. So yeah, if any of you guys need to reach me at all, or if any of you are interested in helping out, it's pretty easy. We have a Little John's email address, but I'm going to give you the super easy one, which is just Dave, DAVE, at chefdavemadison.com. And that's it. Dave at chefdavemadison.com. Oh, and COM, not con. I'm not in the prison system yet, but chefdavemadison.com. But if you guys want to shoot an email, if you want to talk, if you want to get together, if you want to see the space, if you want to talk in person about how we can help fix the world, I will tell you the last little bit about our mission is that we're not just going to be in Dane County. Our goal long term is that we're going to go start in Dane County and then go to Milwaukee and Chicago and then Detroit, St. Louis, New Orleans, and then eventually expand out towards the coast. So our goal is not just to do one little pet project here, but to take the revenue generated here and go out to just fix the planet. Since government doesn't seem to be doing it and other people aren't, I'm like, well, hey, why not? The last thing I want to leave you guys with, I have 2 quick little stories, and then any other questions you guys have, I'm totally down for, or if you guys have to leave, that's fine too, or if I have to leave, I guess. And I have 2 little things I want to talk about. One is the difference between micro action and macro action. And it's basically the reason why I'm doing Little John's and why I do what I do in the community. The macro versus micro, what I mean by that is this, right? So many people I talk to are constantly saying, but how is anything I'm doing saving anything, right? There's so much bad in the world. There's so much everything, things like recycling, like how does one can I throw away or not make any kind? How can we have impact on the world? I think it's so interesting. If you were to ask anyone, my dad's about to turn 70, and if you were to ask him or anyone of his generation when they were 20, where do you see the world in 50 years? I can almost guarantee you that almost every single person would have answered with something positive, right? Like, we're going to be colonizing Mars, and we're going to be like, nuclear powered vacuum cleaners. And we're going to see this, like, with technology is going to come this unification of the world. And we're going to fix hunger with all these new growth things that we have and this new, biological engineering for plants. Like, we're going to be able to feed everybody. It'll be amazing. But I will tell you right now, I will give you $500 cash if you can find someone in their 20s today, anyone in their 20s, that will give you a positive outlook on where does 50 years look like to you, right? It's tough. I would give you $500. You come find me that person that you didn't bribe with $400 to do it, but I guarantee you it would be darn hard for you to find. And that's because we have gotten so obsessed with what the micro action is that we've forgotten that a bunch of micro actions make a macro action. And I'll give you an example, okay? I want you to think about this. You're at the office at work, or you're at the office at work, and you drink a can of soda, right? Now you drink that can of soda and you set it down on your desk, it's empty, and your friend comes behind you and they tap you on the shoulder and they say, oh, we got to go to a meeting. And you're like, oh, okay. And you know that there's a trash can under your desk. And you also know that there's a recycling bin that's up a flight of stairs and all the way at the end of the hall is one of those big blue bins. Now you might tell yourself, I recycle everything all day and it's just one can. This one can doesn't make a difference. I'll throw it in the trash. And I'm not saying you have a 5-minute conversation about this. I'm just saying that you just throw the can in the trash because you tell yourself you recycle all the time, right? Now that seems like a really tiny action, but I want you to think about this. There are 250,000 people in the city of Madison, okay? What if just once a week, every person in Madison has that same thought go through their head of it's just one can, right? Now, just in the city of Madison, you've got 250,000 cans a week ending up in a landfill instead of being recycled. That's 1 million cans a month and 12 million cans a year that end up in a landfill because the micro action in your thought is this one can doesn't make a difference. But it's not true. If everyone gets the same little switch, like let's just say, you know, there are 20 people on this call today, and all of you remember just this one little story, and all of you don't throw away that one can sometime because you remember that story, think about what kind of micro action that has in the long term. And the last thing I want to tell you is I think the biggest problem in the world, and this is what I'm going to end with, I think the biggest problem in the world today is that everybody thinks they're good, right? And why is that a bad thing? Isn't it good to think you're good? Like that should be a good thing. I know some of you are looking at me like, you asshole. But here's the thing. I'm going to tell you why it's a problem to think that you're good. Because once you think you're good, you stop challenging yourself to be better. And when you think about all of you guys, when you first started out on your career, I'll give you me as an example as a chef. When I first started out as a chef and I graduated from Le Cordon Bleu, I graduated top of my class. I was working at a Michelin-starred restaurant, and every single day I was asking myself, how could I be a better chef? I was looking at pictures and recipes and watching YouTube videos and learning from other chefs online and watching all sorts of TV shows and looking at food porn, you know, like all of this stuff. I was looking at all this amazing stuff to try and figure out how could I be a better chef, right? Today, I am 5,000 times the chef I was right out of culinary school. But how much time am I spending every day trying to be a better chef today versus back then? Not much. And I think the same thing is true of almost everyone, right? We all assume that we're good. Before COVID hit, I would have, I'd be speaking to 1,000 people in a room, and I'd just ask them, I'd say, okay, how many of you guys are good or bad? How many of you are good? And the funny thing was, no one said good right away because no one wanted to be like the cocky person who's like, I'm amazing. But then I was like, okay, we're just looking at black and white, good or bad. Are you good or bad? How many of you are good? And sure enough, most of the audience would raise their hand. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's prove it. How many of you guys would go to, right now, I've got buses outside. How many of you out of 1,000 would follow me and go to a soup kitchen or a food pantry and help feed the homeless just for an hour? And I promise I'll get you to your next thing. How many of you guys would come, right? And sure enough, every hand in the audience would go up. Sure, it's just an hour. It's no big deal. And I'm like, thank you for proving my point. You are all amazing and good people. But I've got one more question for you, okay? How many of you in the last 6 months have gone to a soup kitchen or a food pantry to help feed the homeless, right? And then maybe 5 people would raise their hand out of 1,000. And I was like, that was really specific. Like that was a food pantry. But how many of you guys have gone out into the community and helped with something that in no way benefited you? So it couldn't be your church, it couldn't be your school, it couldn't be your friend or neighbor next door. How many of you have just gone out into the community to help do good? And now is a little better, maybe 10%. But I was like, here's the problem, right? When we all know that if we're challenged with a question, we'll answer in the affirmative, that we'll answer with the good, then we kind of tell ourselves, oh, I'm a good person, right? But why that's bad is if we aren't the ones asking ourselves, what good could I do today? No one else is going to ask us. There isn't someone giving us a prompt of how could you be better today? So my challenge for everyone on this, I don't care if you're 90, Marv. I don't care if you're 25, doesn't matter how old you are. Every single day when you wake up, I just want you to ask one question and just get into the habit of it. I just want you to ask, what could I do today to help someone else? That's it. Just one little question once a day. And it doesn't have to be, I'm going to give $10,000 to something. It doesn't have to do any of that. It's just, I'm going to work today. My only challenge for today is I'm going to find someone who needs help and I'm going to help them. That's it. Now I want you to think about that, right? What if we changed that micro action? What if everyone in Madison could, instead of, you know, when we think about those micro versus macro actions, what if every single person in Madison just one time a day just did something nice for someone else? Can you imagine what Madison would look like? Imagine 250,000 people going out of their homes every day on a mission just to do one nice thing. This would be the most beautiful city in the entire world, right? And we all have the capacity for it. How many of you guys, honestly, raise your hands, how many of you guys couldn't do something nice for someone today or tomorrow? No, we all have the capacity, and we all see it on a constant daily basis. And we tell ourselves, we convince ourselves not to do the good thing, whether we're fearful of embarrassing someone, or like it could be as simple as someone struggling to get a box down from a shelf that's too high. How many times have you guys had something like that where you see someone struggling with something, you tell yourself, oh, I'll just be a bother, and you don't do it. And the rest of the day, you're like, I just should have done that. I should have helped that person out. Let's get rid of that filter. Let's just go and let's do something good and kind, and make that your mission every day, just to ask yourself and challenge yourself, because no one else is going to. What can I do good today? So anyway, I want to say thank you guys so much. If you guys have any questions, I did see on the screen, where's Little John's right now? Little John's is between 4 different buildings right now. The build out that we're building, the 25,000 square foot space, is on Verona Road. It was the old A1 furniture building. That's one of the reasons why it needs $6 million. We need about $4 million for the build out and $2 million for the equipment that's going in there. Yeah, I just want to say thank you guys so much for all your time today. Hopefully I didn't babble too much. And if you guys have any questions, I'm so happy to answer any of them.
I have one, David.
Yes. Hey,
Hi.
how are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thanks.
Jack, I didn't see you in the
Well,
thing.
here
You
I
were
am.
on the screen. I've known Jack forever. Jack, by the way, helped me build my bar at Liliana's. So if you guys have ever been to Liliana's, Jack was amazing, and he helped me with this like wood shaver planer thing, and my dad, anyway. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if my name is still written on the underside of one of those tables, but
It is. It is. It absolutely is. We
that
see
was
it
your
every
mom who gave me permission to do it.
every 6 months when we're chipping off the chewing gum that jerks would leave there. I get to see your name. So anyway, Jack, good to see you. What's your question, sir?
Nice seeing you. Hey, this is being recorded, so I would like to know how to get a copy or a link, because I have a couple of people that I want to send this to, so they can see it.
Jack, it will be posted on the Temple Bethel website, but
Okay.
I can also make sure you get a link to it.
Okay, thank you.
And also on that note, if any of you guys would like, we also have our business plan. If any of you guys want to take a look and see how we're going to be profitable, I'd be happy to send that out to anyone who's interested. And we also have a video and some kind of like informational things that we can send to you to send off to other people if you're interested. So again, if you just email me, I'll make sure that Jennifer, that amazing woman I told you about, who's working the 60 hours a week, gets that information to you guys ASAP.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys, and thank you so much for your time today. I know I talk a lot, so sorry if it was too much. I don't know if you can tell, I'm a little passionate about stuff, and when I get passionate, I want to know. And one of the things that I think is so important though is like, whatever it is, man, find your passion. You know, like find it and follow it, and don't let it go. I've been cooking now for 26 years, and even though there have been days where I've struggled, where our family has wondered where our next meal is coming from, even though it's been stressful and sometimes really horrible, I wouldn't give up any of it to keep doing what I do. Every single day when I go to work, I love every single minute that I'm at work. And a majority of that actually comes from the people that are on the screen today. Like the people of you who've come into Liliana's, like you guys as customers are why I love what I do. I love my superpower of being able to pass on my love and my smiles and everything in the food that I cook. And I wouldn't ever have that kind of enjoyment if it weren't for you guys. So thank you so much.
And thank you,
Thank
David.
you, Dave. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Anytime, you guys.
Okay, I guess we'll call it a day, and everyone go out and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And Chef Dave, thanks again.
Anytime, you guys. Thank you again so much for your time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Marcia, it was a wonderful program. It's just
Oh,
petite.
yeah.
Well done. Oh, thank you for
Very
making
nice.
that happen.
Spectacular, Marcia. I
Very
can't, I would like to send that video to my sister. It's really spectacular. It's,
Very cool. Nice to see you all. Felice,
Be well.
later.
So, Marcia, I have a question. Is Marcia still there?
No, it looks like Marcia's gone, sorry.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll just ask her later.
Thanks, Jane.
Good to see
Be
everyone.
well, everyone. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.